Hey Mustangs, in this video we're going to be taking a look at acquired immunity. So we're going to be taking a look at how your body turns on specific defenses against specific bacteria and viruses. So this is basically your third line of defense, and this is the final line of defense. You don't want anything to break through this third line of defense. Now this third line of defense, the interesting thing about it is it actually has to be turned on. You actually have to turn on that third line of defense in order for it to work properly and fight against specific bacteria and viruses. So let's go ahead and take a look and see how that actually happens. Now, before you go any further in the video, make sure that you go to the class website and you take a look at the handout, print it out, and follow the directions from the class objectives. So you find this handout, Acquired Immunity, Activating the Immune System. The first page shows all the steps in order. And then there's a second page that goes along with it that describes the different steps. And what you do is you take a look and you try to figure out which descriptions go to each step. I want you to try to figure it out on your own first. Like many things in biology and in life, the series of steps that happen just makes sense. So I want you to see if you could take a look at it and if you can predict and put things together before you come back to the video and I actually explain step by step what's actually happening. All right, so in order for the immune system to get turned on, there's a series of steps where one has to happen before the other. And it has to happen in a specific order, otherwise the immune system is not activated. So in order to take a look at this, we're going to follow the chickenpox virus and see how your acquired immunity, your specific defenses are going to be turned on specifically against the chickenpox virus. So chickenpox virus is a pathogen. It's either a bacteria or virus, in this case a virus, that enters into the body that's going to do damage to your cells. So chickenpox virus gets in your body. Along comes a macrophage. Macrophage is a type of phagocyte. It's going to engulf the virus. So it's going to take that virus inside. It's going to break apart that virus using enzymes once it's inside the macrophage. The macrophage doesn't fully destroy it though. What it's going to do, it's going to break that virus apart and then it's going to take parts of it, primarily the antigens, the protein receptors on the surface of the virus, and it's going to present it on the outside of the macrophage cell. Now, when it presents it on the outside of the cell, we call it a major histocompatibility complex, or shortened a lot easier, an MHC. So all of these here that you see on the outside, those would be major histocompatibility complexes, MHCs. And this is a way of presenting to the other cells of the immune system the parts of the virus that can be used to basically fight against it. So the protein receptors remember, are very, very important. So the immune system has to know what the protein receptors on a bacteria or virus looks like in order to fight against it. So you had the virus come in, macrophage takes it in, breaks it apart, presents the protein receptors on the outside. Next step, along comes another cell from the immune system called helper T cells. The helper T cells will bind to the MHCs. And when they bind, this causes the macrophages to release a chemical called interleukin-1. So this chemical, once it gets released, is going to activate other helper T cells. So this chemical actually draws the other helper T cells in, and it causes the other helper T cells to become activated against this specific, in this case, the chickenpox virus. As the other T cells become activated, now they're going to release a chemical called interleukin-2. And interleukin-2 is going to do two things. So here's where the pathway splits. So interleukin-2, these chemicals, don't overthink it. These are just molecules that get released by this helper T cell. Those molecules are chemical messages. They're going to activate other things in the immune system. So from here, you're going to have cytotoxic T cells become activated. So the interleukins can activate cytotoxic T cells. And the job of cytotoxic T cells is to go through the body and destroy any cell that's already become infected by the chickenpox virus. So cytotoxic T cells literally hunt through the body and destroy any cell that's already infected. And this makes sense because you don't want these cells to be a home or a harbor for viruses to continue to reproduce. So cytotoxic T cells go through and kill as many infected cells that they can find. So that's one thing that happens. Now another thing that happens from this interleukin-2 that was released, interleukin-2 will activate B cells. B cells will become, when they become activated by the interleukin 2, they will become two different types of cells. Some B cells that become activated are going to become memory cells. Other B cells will become plasma cells. So again, some B cells become memory cells, other B cells become plasma cells. The plasma cells are going to make antibodies right away in order to help fight against the chickenpox virus. So it'll make millions of antibodies that will be able to bind to the protein receptors and help protect the body against the chickenpox virus. These memory cells are going to be floating around in your body, so that way if you ever get the chickenpox virus again, you will be able to immediately recognize it. So that's what the memory cells' jobs is, to be able to recognize in the future. Now, two things you need to know. Primary immune response. The primary immune response is the first time you get exposed to a bacteria or virus. We call that a primary immune response. It takes about 10 to 17 days for your immune system to become fully activated, and you usually get sick that first time, unfortunately. So in a primary immune response, you're getting sick because it's the first time you've ever been exposed to it, and it takes too long for your immune system to become fully activated. But then you have a secondary immune response. If you ever get exposed to that same bacteria or virus again, your immune system is already ready to go. You've activated the cytotoxic T cells. You've activated the memory cells. You've activated plasma cells. They're all ready to go. So in a secondary immune response, it takes only about 2 to 7 days to fully activate and protect you against the bacteria or virus. So usually in a secondary immune response, you don't get sick. So in many cases, you only get sick once when you're exposed to something, and the second time, third time, fourth time, however many times after that, you usually don't get sick. The exception is, as you get older, your memory cells start to break down, antibodies start to break down. So the older you get, a lot of times you may get exposed to something you were exposed to a long time ago and you made all that stuff for, but a lot of it has been broken down, so you wind up getting sick again. But if you're healthy and you're not too old, the secondary response is usually your immune system turns on so fast and protects you so quickly that you're fine. Now, when we look at these steps, so here's the steps here. Pathogen enters, macrophage eats it, presents it on the MHCs. The helper T cells bind, release interleukin, activates other helper T cells. Other helper T cells activate cytotoxic T cells. Cytotoxic T cells hunt the body and destroy infected cells. The interleukin also activates memory B cells, B cells, whew, that was a hard one, B cells, in order to become memory cells or plasma cells, which make antibodies. So these plasma cells are the ones that make the antibodies that help protect you as well. When you look at this, these two branches here, so the branch that goes left towards cytotoxic and the branch that goes right, they're called two different things. So cell-mediated response is the cytotoxic T cells. So this branch, we call it the cell-mediated response because the cytotoxic T cells go through and hunt and destroy the cells. So we call this branch to the left here the cell-mediated response. Now we call the branch to the right a humoral response. Okay, so when the B cells become activated, become memory cells, plasma cells, and the plasma cells make antibodies, we call that the humoral response. So we have primary response and secondary response, which is primary is the first time you get exposed, secondary the second time, a lot faster to turn on your immune system. And then you have here the cell-mediated, which is the cytotoxic T cells, and then everything on this side is the humoral response. All right, so quick review. Pathogen enters, macrophage is going to engulf it and break it apart using enzymes. Along comes a helper T cell, releases chemicals that activate other helper T cells. Helper T cells release a chemical that activates cytotoxic T cells against that specific bacteria or virus, and they hunt the body to find any cells that have already been destroyed by bacteria or viruses. And then you have the other side, and this, remember, is a cell-mediated response. Then you have the humoral response here. The interleukins, the chemicals, activate B cells to become memory cells, and plasma cells make antibodies. All right, now HIV and AIDS. So HIV is human immunodeficiency virus, and basically what HIV does, HIV is the virus that gets in your body. Once you get to a point where the virus has killed so many of your cells, we call that AIDS. So the actual cells that the HIV virus kills is your helper T cells and your macrophages. So those are the very start of the immune system, of activating the immune system. So if the helper T cells are gone and the macrophages are gone, you have a huge problem. You can't turn on your immune system anymore. So when people get HIV in their body, the HIV goes through and starts killing their helper T cells. If a person gets less than 200 helper T cells in one drop of blood, at that point, so many of their helper T cells have been killed that it's like their immune system can't even really turn on anymore. So we call that AIDS at that point. So again, HIV is a virus that causes the disease we call AIDS. And AIDS is when so many helper T cells have been destroyed that it's almost like they don't have an immune system. So an example, so let's say you get a cold. A cold virus gets in, macrophage eats it, destroys it, but now someone has HIV virus. The HIV virus goes through and is destroying the helper T cells. So it's like the helper T cells aren't even there. So HIV destroys the helper T cells. You can't go any further. Your immune system is worthless to you. So what happens is people, so you can't turn on your cytotoxic T cells, you can't activate your B cells. You can die from really simple bacteria and viruses that wouldn't normally kill someone. So it's not a very good thing to have. We're making a lot of discoveries and advancements in dealing with HIV, but basically a person with HIV, the HIV virus isn't what kills them. It's usually another bacteria or virus that comes in and kills them because that person could no longer turn on their immune system.